Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time it is when you're watching this, I'm really delighted to be talking to you a little bit about sort of digital innovation and how you might translate your projects into success on the ground. We're going to cover quite a few topics here, but I hope that gives you some tools and some resources and a lot of thought questions as you embark on the projects you're working on. So I'm going to talk about some pragmatic tools for project management, a little bit about stakeholder engagement, and then present you the field of implementation science and what that might offer for you. So first, project management. You're managing a project. You're trying to get change across the line, and that really means team or people management. The reality is that the success of any project is often determined or highly influenced by the project team tasked with delivering it. Even the best planned projects will fail if the team doesn't perform to the best of its ability. So this means that the human side of the project work, managing the team, is really, really important. You need to also think about your project and how it's presented. Like, is it low complex or high complex? Is it low cost or high cost? Are you confident of the outcomes? Are there lots of known knowns or many unknown knowns? How politically sensitive is it? Is there general agreement between stakeholder groups that this needs to happen and it's going to happen and this is the right way to go? Are you able to assess the environment well? Are you confident about the patterns and the events and the cause and effect and the value of the project you're putting forward? Or is this one that's a little bit more emergent and there's many competing ideas and multiple systems and subsystems? And then what about the technology itself? You know, is it well, existing and likely to work, or is it something new with multiple systems and subsystems? All of these factors really intertwine to determine the complexity of your project and how you might deliver it, whether you're going to use a kind of an orthodox waterfall approach or whether you're going to use something more agile, like design thinking. And you just really need just to do a little bit of an audit about your project and your project capacity and what's going on the ground in terms of the systems, the environment, the agreement about the need for the project, how predictable it is, the cost you have, and how complex it is. And I really just want to briefly share three principles for partnering for project success. The first, of course, no surprises. I'm going to talk about what's in it for me, and then a bit more about clarity. So the first one is no surprises. It's really important. That we develop, of course, a culture of collaboration and of communication of psychological safety. It's one of the most critical factors predicting project success is the fact that there is honesty and trust between the stakeholders. You need to somehow, if you're the project lead or on the project team, you need to create that environment. So you need to be really clear that you want to know what's going on. You want to hear the bad news as well as the good news. So hashtag no surprises. I kind of like the WIFM and WIFU. What's in it for me or what's in it for you? Okay. So if we agree that the success of a project is going to determine on how well the team works together, then we need to leverage the strengths of each team member, each partner and maximize their natural skills. That will then enable you to deliver the project on time and within budget. Well, let's hope so. So let's figure out, what is it? What's in it for each of your project participants, and how can you magnify and support that and communicate with them in a way that actually makes them realize or helps them realize the advantage of prioritizing your project? It's a great quote from Babe Ruth. The way a team plays as a whole determines its success. You may have the greatest bunch of individual stars in the world, but they don't play together, the club won't be worth a dime. So how can you create the environment where you're playing together collaboratively? And finally, third principle really has to be about clarity. Everybody's got to know their part, know their deadlines, well define roles, really clear about deadlines and deliverables. Otherwise, you're going to just have all these misaligned events and efforts, and it's going to be much more challenging. So clarity really is important. And the second point, and something that perhaps is sometimes not done as well as it can be because it is hard, is stakeholder engagement. You need to engage, consult, and align. You need to make sure that key stakeholders know what's going on. They've got some short talking points about your project, and you keep them in the loop. There's often, I think, a fair amount of intuition in this space. Like you might have the feeling that you should send an email to your boss about something, and that actually works out to be right. And you need to always, I think, have a little bit of an elevator pitch going on. So if you bump into someone senior, you're able to give them the narrative that you want to share about your project. Really important to consider your stakeholders, consider who might and should be on the project management team or the reference group. So a quote here about meeting together as a beginning, learning together as progress, and working together as success. Okay, so you need to think about who do I need on my team? Who do I need to inform and consult and engage with? Is there someone that has got some really essential inside knowledge that I need for the project success? You know, do I need any kind of technical specialists from external organizations? Like, we don't have the skills for a certain thing in-house. Can we complement it? Are there any skills gaps that really need to be addressed? And what about end users? Where are their voices? You know, how are they part of the team? And what strategies are you going to use to foster collaboration and communication across all these different levels of stakeholders? And that's where you can use a lot of design thinking and co-design processes. And you really need to think about how you're going to balance the technical expertise and technical knowledge with the practical on the ground insights that will really ensure that your project actually works and meets the needs of stakeholders. There's a grid here that talks about sort of stakeholder interest and stakeholder influence. Okay, if there are people that are really interested in your project and have high influence, then you need to really engage with them and keep them satisfied. If there are people that have got a lot of interest but actually have relatively little influence, then you know what? Maybe you don't spend as much time on them. People that have got low interest and low influence, they get essential information only and they get minimal contact, and those with low interest but high influence, you need to anticipate their needs. Okay, so you really need to think about who your stakeholders are, who's interested and committed, involved, knowledgeable, and supportive, who's not supportive, and what's the narrative out there in your organization and outside your organization about your project. How can you take control of that narrative, and then how can you leverage your connections to make your project successful? And one of the things you can do is complete a stakeholder engagement map to figure out who your stakeholders are, how much engagement they need, and then really think about, and even simple things like diarising in your diary. Okay, every fortnight, I'm going to drop a quick email to these people. Once a month, I'm going to connect with those people. I'm going to engage in, and I do love this, management by walking around, MBWA, really important. If you know that someone influential has coffee every Monday at a certain place, be there, be walking around so that you can informally update them. So you can use this table here to map out which quadrant your stakeholders fit in. Okay, so if they have got high influence and high impact, you really need to consult them all the time. Okay, you need to look at collaboration and informing. If they've got low influence and low impact, then just keep them informed. Okay, if they've got low influence but high impact, you need to involve them. Just really think about who your primary, your key stakeholders are and who your secondary stakeholders are, and then develop a communication plan and engagement plan from there. You know, so you can walk through who your stakeholders, you know, prioritize it based on influence and importance. Select some representatives from each stakeholder group, get your influencers and your leaders, ensure there's representation across relevant levels and domains and organizations and sectors and divisions. Really think about, you know, using a calendar for regular check-ins and using varied communication methods, which might be a survey, a focus group, workshops, you know, a quick email update, even that intentional bumping into someone somewhere. Really incorporate their feedback into your project planning and let them know how you've done that, and communicate and share updates about how things have changed. You know, stakeholders really are partners in project success, so you need to keep them informed. There's a number of tools out there that can help you think about these things and think about your project in a different way. I'm going to share you a couple. You don't have to use them all, of course, but pick the ones that resonate and experiment with them. Hmm. I like this hexagon tool. It's a heptagon and hexagon, and it talks about sort of two levels. One, can we do it in the right way? So do we have the capacity to do this, the resources, we're able to do it? And then secondly, is this the right thing to do? Is this intervention correct? Does it fit with the local settings, the missions and of our organization? Does it benefit us? And is it appropriate for the target population? You know, and then figuring out a plan to identify and overcome any kind of implementation barriers, and develop a user-friendly manual of what an intervention is. And really, this tool is really quite helpful to make a go, no-go decision about your project. You can get it from the Active Implementation Research Network. Just Google that and go to it and look at the resources online. But I'm going to talk through some of their questions. So this one asks, are staff actually ready to implement whatever program you've got? Okay, have we got a clear written description of the program, of its values and its principles, of who's eligible to enroll, who's not, core components, and it's good examples so people know what to say. And we've got some tools that sort of outline how to use it and not use it. I should say that the Active Implementation Research Network usually focused on youth kind of behavior change programs, but these principles are still relevant. I love this. This is a question to think about. Are we the right people to do it? Can we do it in the right way? Have we the capacity to implement? Okay. Can we just have the support to train people up? Have we got the resource availability? What's our training, our systems, our data systems, our coaching, our admin? We've got kind of system alignment. Have we got the resources and supports to do this? And have we got the capacity to collaborate? Have we got a history of effective collaboration in the sector across partners and in the region? Have we involved key stakeholders, and how transparent have our decision-making processes been? Is there a way we really whether we should do it or not? And then, is it the right thing to do? Deep dive into, does the data show the need of this? Does it show the value of the innovation or improvement, and then the social significance of this? What about the needs of the population? Is the outcomes? Is this really worth it? Okay, is this going to shift the needle enough to make it worth the effort? What's the evidence? Is it cost effective, and does this align? Okay, what about the fit? Does this really fit? With the community values, with our values, and with the organizational structures, and of course, the usability of the intervention. Do you know what I mean? Is it gonna work? Can we learn from how others have done it? So there's a number of good questions here that you can just print off and just talk with your project team about. Really reflect on your specific initiative and its alignment. Is it the right thing to do? And are we the right people to do it? Can we do it in the right way? And if we can't, what can we change? What needs to change so we can deliver this specifically, or what do we need to tweak this project or program in a certain way? And I like to think about how we're framing the problem or challenge, particularly inside our organization, and take people on a systems level journey for change. So this is a tool, an approach that talks about, excuse me, how we need to change how we think about things. So if we're responding to things at an event level, then we're just responding to the immediate issues. And so the example here is of, fire management. If we're just responding to fires, then we just, if we're firefighters, we just go to where the fires are. That's it, responding to the events. When there's a fire, we go and put them out. Okay. Now, if we go to the next level of thinking, the pattern level, then we actually start to think about, we kind of proactively think, okay, what are the patterns? Okay. Are there places and times or geographic patterns of where the fire is occurring? And can we respond there in different ways? Can we intervene in different ways? Okay. And that's where we start to look at the system, look at the addressing the root causes. So systemic structure, this level of thinking is we've moved past thinking about the event, fires are happening. We've looked at the patterns. Okay, where are they happening? Now we're looking at the systems, the root causes. And it might be that, we might need to change the building materials or zoning laws or something so we actually reduce the number of fires happening at all. Okay, and then the highest level is that we all share this vision. There's a mental model or shared vision or community values around safety or long-term fire prevention. Okay, and that's moving us and everybody in our project and in our community up the level from really focusing and responding at an individual event level, being very reactive, to being proactive and changing the system. Okay. And so we want to take everybody on this kind of system level journey where we're kind of trying to intervene and change things at that higher level, at the systemic level, or even the pattern level, just trying to move from being so responsive to being proactive. And you can walk through this and talk through this based on your specific context and problem and challenge. And I think it's important to take some time here to think about, okay, let's stop responding at an event level and let's respond at the system level. And now finally, I just want to spend the next 15, 20 minutes or so talking through implementation science. Now, this is how it provides a roadmap for the challenge of developing, testing, and translating digital interventions, or any interventions, to be honest, into practice. Um, Implementation science is its own domain, and there is a lot, many frameworks, tools, toolkits. If you Google it, you'll find an awful lot of resources out there, and this could be, a whole course or a whole degree, really. So if you start to feel a little bit confused or lost, or like, oh my gosh, there's so many frameworks, yeah, there is. But you can just pick one and work through that tool, and that will help you. Okay, so implementation science is the scientific inquiry into how we get, and I'm putting get in quotation marks, people to do the thing that we want to do. Okay, and it's generally been used a lot in healthcare, where like I've got all these researchers like, oh, this will change patient care, and they want to try and change practice. So they've got to convince health policy and system leaders to act, and those leaders got all these questions like, what's the evidence? What's the problem? Is this a problem we need to solve? Like, really, is this important? What will it cost? What will we need to change? Who's it going to work for? When and how and why? And so, as a response of dealing with all those concerns and issues and valid questions, implementation science has emerged as the scientific inquiry about how to get people to do the thing we need. And implementation strategies are the methods or techniques used to prove the adoption, implementation, sustainment, and scale up of a variety of interventions. So you can see the relevance here for us when we're working on, digital change projects. We want people to use our intervention. Okay, well, how are we going to convince them to do the thing? Right, we have to think about it. We can approach it in a systematic way. Um, I do like this. It's called the toothbrush theory, and it says, excuse me, theories are like toothbrushes. Everyone has their own, and no one wants to use anyone else's. And by that, it means people pick their pet theory and then they focus on it and they don't want to hear about anybody else's. And so you can do that too. Feel free to pick your pet theory from the ones I'm talking about and use that moving forward. Now, listen, I really like REAIM. Okay, REAIM stands for Reach, Effectiveness, Adoption, Implementation, and Maintenance. Can you see the questions here? Reach, how do I reach a targeted population? How do I know my intervention is effective? Effectiveness. Adoption, how do I develop the support to deliver my intervention? Implementation, how do I ensure it's delivered properly? And maintenance, how do I make sure it's delivered over the wrong time? Now, while this is talking about translating research into practice, into action, very much can be any kind of project. And the REAIM organization has a wonderful interactive tool online. You can see the link here, where you can type in, you answer some questions, you type them in, and it prints out a PDF document at the end to give you some tools to take forward. How do you know if you reached them and who participated? How do you know that these people are the target population? What methods will you use to attract underserved populations and focus on health inequalities? What information is required? There's a lot of questions that you can walk through, really helpful. Another approach is the Consolidated Framework for Implementation Research, okay, CIFA. And this talks about multiple layers and levels. So it talks about, your intervention. So some questions about, the relative advantage and the complexity and the cost of the thing you're interventing. Talks about the outer setting. So, what's going on externally, the inner setting of the organization and the culture and the team and the process. How do you engage, opinion leaders, champions, change agents, and how do you, think about the role of the innovation recipients and the innovation deliverers, and what are the barriers and facilitators? What's the need, the capability, the opportunity, and the motivation? And they talk through, there's a number of tools here that help you do all of this. And they talk about the core competencies you need if you want to have a successful implementation strategy and make something happen. You need to develop a team. You need to unearth the problem, select the thing that you're going to do, assess the barriers and facilitators, select and build change strategies, adapt to the local context, plan for implementation, and then implement. Of course, engage in continuous learning for improvement, plan for sustainability and sustaining it, and then plan for an enact, spread, and scale, so the growth. There's a lot of resources and information in here, but CIFA is a consolidated framework for implementation research. Has lots of tools online that you can use. This is a different framework, but I also like it. So you can see that they're all quite similar. It's EPIS, exploration, preparation, implementation, and sustainment. So it talks about exploring what's out there, exploring the at all levels of the outer context of the system and the inner organizational context across all the phases. And then think about everything that's out there and how you might influence that, and how the nature of the innovation or the practice being implemented and the role of the people developing it all interconnects to determine where something succeeds or doesn't. And what's helpful for EPIS for us is that actually they've written, there's a journal article about how to do this in the public service sector, and I think that's really useful. And it talks about how, often we explore these things, we need to actually explore whether an issue needs attention or improved approach, and whether clients are involved. They could be really powerful advocates for system change, and we often say that the adoption decision for a specific program is a one-time event, but actually, often organizations will experiment with an innovation, and that will lead to broader innovation and implementation. And asks a lot of questions about the climate, the culture, the leadership. Thinking about, have we got who's championing this? What are the, a little bit of the organization? Do we have the skills and expertise? What are the outer contexts? What's going on at the political level? Who's supporting this? And what is the timeline here? So there's a number of different approaches. It's really, really helpful. And I suggest reading the journal article here, which you can Google, Advancing a Conceptual Model of Evidence-Based Practice Implementation in Public Service Sectors by Ahrens. I like this a lot because it talks about the innovation value systems organizational fit. Okay. Does this innovation, just this project you're taking forward, does it fit with the system? Okay. Because how well it will be implemented and accepted really is going to vary to the degree that it matches the mission, values, and tasks and duties of the organization and the individuals within that organization. So what's the alignment? Okay, does it fit with the system? And if it doesn't fit as well as it could, what can we tweak to make the fit better, or do we need to take a different project or intervention forward? Now we know, unfortunately, many digital projects fail. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But Trish Greenhall and all have identified and developed this framework, which is really helpful for helping us think through. We're ready to deploy our technology innovation, and we want to assess whether it's going to work or not. What do we need to think about? And then NAS framework, non-adoption, abandonment, scale up, spread, and sustainability. NAS, non-adoption, abandonment, scale up, spread, and sustainability really helps us understand, guide, and monitor and research the kind of technology projects and how well or not they fit the context and what we need to change to enable that to happen. Well worth. There's a lot of tools for NAS out there to support you in your journey, and a lot of it is just actually encouraging people and teams to pause and be really self-reflective about the context and fit of that technology with the context. Now they have there's a number of different tools. I'm going to walk through one now, and it walks through 7 domains and asks specific questions in each domain. It gives you a sense of, okay, how well or not you score in each domain. So the first is the illness of the condition, and that may not be relevant here, but it's worth thinking about the technology itself, the value proposition, the intended adopters, the organization, and the external context. And the 7th domain is how well, how all these domains interact over time. And you can use NAS in many different ways. You can use it to inform the technology designing, to identify kind of technology solutions that, despite, enthusiasm, haven't actually been rolled out well. You can use it to plan your implementation, scale up, or rollout of a technology program. So you can actually use it as a planning process. And that's how I recommend using it. You've got your technology or your program or your initiative or your digital solution. Let's just think through and answer these questions about it, and then address those, look at how we score, do a bit of a reflexive audit, and then look at where we stand with that. And also use it to look at where a program might have failed, and to try and understand why that might be, and to learn from that. So it's very much, if we want to create a kind of learning organization and environment, where we are impactful and our projects are delivered, then we need to engage with these kind of tools that help us be the kind of leaders that we want to be in terms of thinking differently about the rollout and use and acceptance or not of different technological programs and initiatives. So here, This is a NASCAT short to help you identify the complexities in your technology project. Again, if you just Google NASCAT short, it will come up. So this is about the illness or condition. You don't necessarily need to do this in your context, but it depends. You might want to, and you just sort of say, do you agree or not with this question? And then sum it. It's about the technology and how might it affect care. There are significant uncertainties in what the tech is, where it will come from, i.e. the provider. There are uncertainties about the technology's performance and dependability, like to bugs. There's what about its usability and acceptability? Okay, maybe key people don't trust the data. Are there significant interdependencies about the technology? Is it going to require major changes to our tasks and routines? Is it that the technology or the service model it supports likely to change significantly? And if you say yes to a lot of those, then this tells you that the technology has a significant complexity which is likely to affect the project's success. And so you really need to think about that. Okay, there's some really good questions in here for us to really think about the technology that we're working with and I guess, its performance. What about the organization? Okay, what about reality is that some organizations are better at taking up innovations than others. And what about yours? Okay, is it capacity? Do we have the capacity to do this? Are we ready for this innovation? Do they find it hard to commission or purchase it? The work needed to introduce this and to make it routine practice has been underestimated or inadequately resourced? Yes or no? The organisation are likely to have significant restructures or change in leadership, mission, or strategy over the next 3 or 5 years? This is a really interesting question because I don't know how often you've been involved in projects and they've been the pet project of someone in the leadership team. Then they move on and the project kind of dies with them. So if some of these questions are true, then it's likely that there's significant complexity relating to participating organisations, which is going to impact the project's success. Okay. What about the value proposition of the technology itself? Okay, this might be different for different people, and it might be financial or it might be non-financial. Okay, so what's the value proposition? Is it cost effective? Is it got a negative something? Is it unclear? Okay, now again, this is in the context of healthcare, and you can tweak this in your context, but it's about the thinking. The thinking behind this is really important. What about the people who are supposed to use this, the intended adopters? Are we uncertain about whether and how they might use it? What about frontline staff, the people that have got to interact with these people? What about the implications? And are people going to change their view on this tech over time? Okay, just have a little think, deep dive about the adopters and how they might perceive this technology. And what about the external context? So critical. I mean, a really good example of this has been COVID and how all of a sudden, online meetings, online engagement, things that we thought were impossible before COVID have become much more possible. So COVID, yes, it did a variety of things that were extremely challenging, but it also created this external context for digital innovation as well. So let's think about this in the context of your innovation or your project or your technology. What about the political policy climate? Is it supportive or not? What about professional bodies, or professional groups, and what do they think of this? What about, again, this is about healthcare context, but you can switch it to what about, the key stakeholders and groups? Are they opposed to this? What about regulations in the commercial context? How have other people done similar things? Can we learn from that? Are there any kind of external changes that could threaten this? And what about the policy, regulatory, and economic context? Over the next couple of years, is this going to support this technology rollout, or is it going to impede or oppose it in some way? Okay. The idea here is to really think long and hard about the external conditions that could complicate the adoption and spread of your innovation. So, in closing, these tools are designed, and particularly the NASCAT, is designed to help you think about the various complexity of your digital project and how they interact. And then you use your responses and notes as a basis for a team discussion. And in fact, you could roll this out, these questions, you could tweak them and roll them out in a design thinking, co-design sprint, and have people really deep dive into the value proposition for your technology. I can hear some of you saying, "Oh gosh, some of these questions these are hard, and it's true. We're going to hit some problems here." Well, you know what? Best to talk about those problems internally now than a year from now when you hit them in the real world rollout stage. So best to surface these issues and think about them early rather than ignore them and hope that they don't come up and bite you, because you know they are going to come bite you. So there were some tools here to think about project management, to think about stakeholder engagement, and to really, think broadly about the context of your technology, who's going to use it, how they're going to use it, and maybe think about applying implementation science lens in thinking about and deploying your project.